This morning, Fort Worth Mayor Mattie Parker being blunt about property taxes. The Bible is among the books removed from the library in one Texas school district. State Rep Matt Krause on whether the legislature might soon dictate to districts which books they can let students read. For the first time since before the pandemic, Texas is again grading public schools. Harold Dutton, the chairman of the House Public Education Committee, on the good news and bad news that came from the report cards. Why are victims of the Uvalde massacre still months away from getting millions of dollars in public assistance? And will this have political consequences? Plus, a new poll shows Ken Paxton's re-election campaign might be in trouble.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning to you. I'm Jason Whiteley. Politically speaking, this has hardly been a sleepy summer. With that in mind, let's get to the headlines here. The Republican Party of Texas is trying to remove 23 libertarians from the November ballot. These are candidates for lieutenant governor, for Congress, and the legislature. Republicans are arguing in court that the libertarians either did not get enough signatures to get on the ballot or did not pay the necessary filing fees. In reality, libertarian candidates usually pull away some votes from Republicans. The entire election staff in one central Texas county just quit. This is Gillespie County, the Hill Country, and includes Fredericksburg as well. The elections administrator there said she has had death threats and had been stalked since the 2020 election. Gillespie County is now asking the Secretary of State's office what to do about November. And this coming Wednesday, we'll be watching for accountability in Uvalde. The school board there will decide whether to fire the police chief, Pete Arredondo. This is after law enforcement, school law enforcement, and others waited more than an hour before charging in on a school shooter that killed 19 elementary kids and their teachers. There have been no similar calls for accountability for DPS leaders, which had dozens more troopers there. Let's start this morning with property taxes, though. They are sky high in this state, and they grow every year. You don't need me telling you that, though. Cities and counties across Texas are creating their budgets right now. They're deciding how much of our money they need to keep police on the streets and keep the trash picked up. Our first guest is the mayor of Fort Worth, Mattie Parker, whose city is again lowering taxes by a couple of cents. Mayor, welcome back to our program. City staff there in Fort Worth is recommending that the property taxes the city issues be lowered by 2 cents for every $100. Houses obviously are valued much more than that. They go up every year. Are residents there actually going to be paying less city taxes?
No, the short answer is no, Jason. And I recognize that that may be a pain for many taxpayers. The Parker family does not like writing their property tax check either. But we're attempting to demonstrate to our taxpayers and residents here in Fort Worth why two things. First of all, why a 2-cent reduction in property tax is fiscally prudent to return as much revenue as we can to taxpayers. But importantly, what we need with the additional revenue that may see a slight increase in your property tax bill. The average homeowner in Fort Worth pays about $1,400 in city property taxes annually. I like to remind people that's 24% on average in the city of Fort Worth of their entire tax bill, meaning over half usually goes to your ISD, as you well know, and the rest to your other entities, including the city of Fort Worth. So just like when you go to the grocery store, you go out to dinner, you make a purchase on Amazon. The question is, what's your return on that investment? Are you getting what you asked for? And the city of Fort Worth needs to demonstrate that the new programs and focuses we have to be a clean and safe city in the city of Fort Worth is really good, being good stewards of those dollars.
Well, let me ask you about some of those, because some of this includes hiring, I think, 71 more police officers that would hit the streets next calendar year. There are a number of things that the extra tax revenue would actually fund. What's the most important among them?
I already mentioned the two themes we have in this budget is our residents deserve a clean and safe city with optimum level of quality of life. And it starts with public safety. We are adding over 70 sworn officers to Fort Worth Police Department. That's a recommendation from Chief Neil Noakes and his department, of which our management team responded accordingly and said, yes, I agree with you. Let's recommend this to City Council and to the mayor. And then secondarily, there's also some civilian positions within the department. Mind you, these are new police officers that'll be patrol officers, neighborhood police officers, but also those special programs that you guys have covered already, the crisis intervention team and the HOPE team that have been incredibly effective at helping community. On the clean side, this is kind of crazy, Jason, but we have 2 street sweepers in the entire city of Fort Worth. We're going to move that to 12, right? Big difference you're going to see across the city of Fort Worth. We're showing several graphics in the community right now, what it looks like pre and post this budget to demonstrate what cleanliness really means from an environmental perspective, and get litter off the streets, help clean up homeless camps, all the things that our residents have been telling us they want more of. And those are prioritized in this budget.
Mayor, when I worked in Houston 20 years ago, there was a lot of talk that the city of Houston wanted to put Wi-Fi along the freeway corridors. You guys in Fort Worth are finally doing that, what Houston and so many other cities wanted to do but have yet to do. You guys have free community Wi-Fi in a number of neighborhoods. Tell me specifically who this is benefiting.
So we started with our neighborhood improvement strategy neighborhoods that started in 2016 with Stop 6 and have gone on to Northside, Ash Crescent, Rosemont, and Como. And the big why is families need to be connected. Over 60,000 residents in Fort Worth do not have connectivity in their homes. That was made even more evident, of course, with COVID, and everybody came home to Zoom for work or Zoom for school. So we started with this phase 2 strategy in these neighborhoods. This improvement strategy has been incredibly effective in all of these communities. We actually did the launch today in partnership with Cisco Systems and Presidio in the Como neighborhood. So in Como, in Stop 6, in Northside, when you could take out your phone in that zone, you'll have free community Wi-Fi. It's City of Fort Worth, CFW neighborhood. You click on it, you have free Wi-Fi. We think it's going to be completely transformational. And don't take my word for it. Take the word of some of these private sector partners that are incredibly exciting. But important, Jason, this is just first phase. Broadband connectivity is also something we're looking at across the entire city, what the future infrastructure looks like. And you'll see more rollout from the IT department as well.
All right, Mayor, always good to see you. Thank you for the time.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate you.
Let's now look at one of the biggest races on your November ballot. A poll out last week shows Attorney General Ken Paxton virtually tied with his Democratic challenger. Her name is Rochelle Garza. UT Tyler and DMN, the Dallas Morning News, did this survey, and Paxton and Garza are only separated by 2 points. Ian Mitra is the senior managing editor at the Texas Tribune. He joins us every Sunday morning for this segment here. Ian, good to see you again. There are a lot of undecided voters in this race. I think a third of them are undecided. The question is Paxton really in trouble, though?
It seems like it's going to be a tight race. I think there's a lot of people who still have questions related to Paxton in terms of undecided voters. He's been facing securities fraud charges since 2015. There is an FBI investigation related to potential, a corruption investigation raised by deputies, former deputies in the AG's office. And, I think there's just these things. I mean, the thing that Paxton has really working for him the most is how closely aligned he is with, former President Donald Trump. Trump is going to do a fundraiser for Paxton in a couple of weeks too. And I think that really it energizes the base for Paxton. So that's going to be the real key to watch. And will certainly help his campaign bank account. That same poll from UT Tyler and the Dallas Morning News also showed Greg Abbott 7 points ahead of Beto O'Rourke. What would it take for O'Rourke to actually shrink that margin as we get closer to November? Yeah, well, the poll kind of showed that what's kind of keeping Abbott's lead is kind of the, how folks kind of view how Abbott has handled the economy, and they see that as much more of the issues are on a national basis rather than a statewide basis. So that's what's kept Abbott in strong position. Obviously we'll see what happens with the economy. I think, issues if issues related to guns and gun violence and, things related to the grid too, if those are things, and of course also with the post-Roe ruling, if those are things that, Beto O'Rourke will probably try to, hammer on to kind of resonate with folks, and we'll see what kind of, where things are in October and November. No doubt. I am back to you in a moment. Thank you very much. Coming up next here, the Bible is among the books taken from the library in one Texas school district. State Rep Matt Krause is with us in a moment about whether the legislature might dictate to districts which books they can have on their shelves. And for the first time since before the pandemic, Texas is grading public schools. There's good news and bad news there. Inside Texas Politics, back in a moment. Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics. Let's talk public education now. In a moment, how school libraries are the latest front in the culture war. But first, campus report cards for schools all across Texas. The first one since the pandemic began. Most schools are doing better than expected, but struggling ones did not get a grade this year. State Rep Harold Dutton is a Houston Democrat, and he chairs the House Committee on Public Education. We gave him a call to explain what's going on. Chairman Dutton, welcome to the program here. These are the first school ratings that the state has seen and parents have seen in the last 3 years since the pandemic. The number of schools getting the highest, rating
has increased despite all the challenges posed by the pandemic. I remember just a couple of years ago, we were all talking about learning loss and how bad the pandemic was going to be when it
Right.
comes to education. None of that actually seemed to happen, did it?
Well, we kind of did things about it. We took care of it to some extent. There are still some districts and some students who fall into that crevice where COVID has actually set them back a little bit. But for the most part, I think it's been fantastic.
Many of the schools that got the not rated or the lowest scores are, as always, in some of the state's poorest communities. How do you expect the legislature to address that next session, Mr. Chairman?
I think I've been taking a look at, for example, what's being done in a state like Mississippi, where what they've done is they've got a third grade program that operates in their school districts that really has revolutionized the learning that's taking place in that state. And so we'll be looking at a number of things in ways that we can improve student outcomes. And so we're going to be doing that next session. That's going to be probably at the top of the list when it comes to how we function as a legislature, but more especially how my 13-member committee on public education functions.
Before we let you go, I want to ask you about school vouchers. That's an idea that's never really gotten off the ground here in the state, but Republicans across the country, as you've seen the headlines, are really pursuing this right now. Do you expect to see some kind of legislation like that next session? And if so, could that pass?
I expect that's going to come up. I mean, it generally always raises its
Right.
ugly head in the Texas legislature. But thank God for the rural legislators, the urban legislators, and the legislators who recognize that vouchers, if everything was all right in public education, if everybody was learning, and we were trying to create another option, then you might look at vouchers. But in this case, what we're trying to do is improve public schools. And to the extent that we employ vouchers, that takes away from our ability to do that. And so I think it'll come up. I'm sure it'll come up, but I don't think it'll pass it. We haven't passed it in the House ever. And it's been by significant margins that it got defeated. So I would expect us to follow that pattern again.
Mr. Chairman, we appreciate the time, sir.
Hey, thank you very much for this opportunity, and let's go improve public education.
Sticking with public education here, conservatives are taking over school boards in this state, and what's on the shelf in school libraries, that's one of their first priorities. In Keller ISD, north of Fort Worth, they've pulled off an Anne Frank book for review. Another group has retaliated and yanked the Bible off the shelves in libraries there. The question this morning, is this getting out of hand? That's what we asked State Rep Matt Krause. He's the Fort Worth Republican who was asking librarians last year whether they had any of some 850 books on LGBT and Black Lives Matter issues. Mr. Chairman, it's good to see you again. Let's start with Keller. I've read Anne Frank. I read the Bible as well, too. These are two books being pulled for review in Keller. Why do you think parents there are questioning these two works specifically for future generations to read?
Well, I think you saw Keller ISD was kind of ground zero for a while on this whole debate on inappropriate books, which books should be on the shelves, whether it was their school board meetings, whether it was their school board elections that they just had in May. This was a topic of conversation the entire time. And so I think you started seeing a bunch of these books being pulled off. And so some folks thought, well, okay, if you're going to try to take some of the books that we like off, we'll challenge the Bible. It's got some adult content in there. So we're going to do that. And so I think that's what became of it. Somebody was just saying, okay, if you're going to try to take books from our side, maybe we'll try to take some books from your side. And now you've got a new school board, right? They had a turnover in May. You had 3 conservative school board members elected. Because of that, you now have a new school board president. And I think they're trying to make good on their campaign promises of revising some of these book policies. And so they did that in August. And now we're starting to see some of those books come through that review process. And I have no doubts that the Bible will be back on the shelves in Keller ISD schools pretty soon. They're just going through that new process.
If it's kind of devolved into this tit for tat on both sides, have you had pause at all to think maybe this isn't a good idea?
I think it's always a good idea to ensure that the books that are in the libraries and bookshelves in your schools are appropriate, age appropriate. And as you and I have talked about, what's appropriate in a Keller ISD high school may not be appropriate in a Keller ISD middle school. So I think you always have those conversations. I think they're constructive. You're right. It's a shame when you're comparing the Bible, the greatest selling book of all time, which includes the greatest story of all time, the redemption of man through the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, with some of these young adult titles like Gender Queer or Lawn Boy. I think then it shows that it's not a very serious conversation at that point, because nobody equates those two things.
How do you expect the legislature might address this when they reconvene in January? Address library books?
That's a great question. Because there's that balance there, right? You want to make sure that those localities have the autonomy and the freedom to make the decisions that are best for them. Keller ISD is different than Northwest ISD. Northwest ISD is different than Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD, which are all within HD 93, along with Arlington ISD. So they're all going to have different views. So you want to make sure you continue to allow for that autonomy and community input. But I do think the legislature will take a look at it, at maybe some guiding standards, some guiding principles on what you should do. And then the particulars will be addressed by the individual school districts. But I'm out of a lot of those conversations at this point. But I think you'll see some movement on it, but I don't know exactly what definite route it's going to take.
Mr. Chairman, you gave up your seat in the Texas legislature to run for the Tarrant County District Attorney's Office. Another Republican narrowly defeated you in the runoff recently. So for the first time in a decade or so here, you're leaving public office. Are we going to see Matt Krause's name on a ballot again in the future?
The door's always open. I've had such an incredible time serving the people of House District 93 in Texas in the Texas House. I've enjoyed it. It was time, as you and I have joked about, my family. Nobody was happier about the loss on May 24th than the other 6 people inside the Krause house. So we're excited for this new phase, but I would never close the door to it. I loved serving the people in my district, and I enjoyed the work. And so if an opportunity presents itself, I would certainly do that. But I don't feel like I have to be into office. I don't feel like I have to be on the ballot or have a title to find ways to hopefully make my community better. So that door is absolutely open. If the opportunity presents itself, we'll take it, but it's nothing that we're forcing at this point.
Matt, it's always good to see you. Thanks.
You too, man. Have a great day.
Coming up, new frustration in Uvalde. Why haven't victims there received any of the $16 million in assistance? We'll talk about potential political consequences next on the Roundtable. Time now for Reporters Roundtable. To put the headlines in perspective, Aya Mitra is back with us from the Texas Tribune in Austin. Joining us this week is Ashley Godot. She is an anchor and the managing editor of political content at KVUE TV in Austin. And Bernadine Steptoe is a political producer at WFAA in Dallas as well. Aya, let's start with you. And Uvalde victims, we learned from Tribune reporting and from others, they have not received any of the largest pot of money in victims assistance, $16 million. And it still might be a couple of months. What in the world is going on?
Yes, this was a national outpouring of generosity, after the tragedy in Uvalde. And, this was collected in an assistance fund. And, there's a committee kind of overseeing the fund. And they've said that they needed time they've done town hall meetings. They want to make sure they're doing the right research to make sure they're not conflicting with any laws or creating any restrictions or complicating things for folks. But, there's still kind of like this call, like people need this assistance now. And so they're going to try to get, applications going in early September. But that still is, for a lot of folks, that's just too late.
It is too late. And Ashley, people have been wanting accountability in Uvalde and all over the state for what happened down there. Is this something that could have political consequences for anyone running for office?
What's interesting is I don't know that it's going to have an impact on those statewide seats, but I think certainly local leaders would be in jeopardy. When you talk about the DA, there has been a lot of people in Uvalde upset about the action and lack of action in the DA, how long it's taken the DA to take any action. I certainly think that there could be consequences there, as well as with some of the members of the council.
Bernadine, what do you expect to happen, if anything?
I think that if a candidate is smart, that they would use that and it could have an impact. But at this point, the people just need money. They need money to survive. And I think that if someone is able to articulate that well, then it will have an impact.
Ashley, let me go back to something that's going on there in Austin, in your city, and Ions as well too. ERCOT, the state's manager of the electric grid, it has a new CEO. Who is this individual, and can this person really change anything?
Well, his name is Pablo Vegas, and right now he's an executive vice president over a company. He's stationed in Ohio and oversees a couple of states out that way. I think this has been a very, very political issue of hiring a new CEO for ERCOT. The hope is that he will have an impact and, really work to have more clear communication with the public about the electric grid, the stability of the grid, and certainly, weatherization of the grid, which is what I think a lot of folks really care about moving forward.
Yeah, Bernadine, do you think, though, at the end of the day, he's kind of hands tied by political stuff, as Ashley mentioned, and regulations, and just the investment that so many power suppliers are willing to make?
You know what? He should know coming into this job that is going to be political. And as reported by the Tribune, Governor Abbott has a very, very big interest in getting the right person in there and controlling the. So if he is not aware into a political situation, then he should be. He should be made aware because it's political. And you have our candidates running for office.
Yeah, indeed so. This is something to watch too. Ian, we're out of time this week. We'll get back to you on that one as well too. But thanks so much for your time, Ian, Ashley, and Bernadine too. Thank you for watching as well. We're back again next Sunday to take you inside Texas politics, and hope you can join us then. Take care.